Martinez's training kicked in immediately, overriding the shock and horror of what he was seeing. The rusty metal trap was enormous, far larger than any animal trap he had ever encountered. It appeared to be some kind of antique bear trap, the kind that had been banned for decades due to their inhumane nature. The metal jaws, each tooth as long as a man's finger, had clamped down around both girls simultaneously. Sarah and Emma lay on their sides, their small bodies positioned in such a way that the trap had caught them both across their lower legs. They were conscious but clearly in tremendous pain and shock. Their faces were streaked with tears and dirt. Their voices were hoarse from calling for help. "It's okay, girls," Martinez called out, his voice steady despite the churning in his stomach. "I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Rex. We're here to help you. You're going to be just fine." Rex had positioned himself near the girls, but was careful not to get too close to the trap mechanism. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, lying down in the grass and whimpering softly, as if trying to comfort the children with his presence. Martinez began his assessment while speaking continuously to keep the girls calm. "Can you tell me your names? Are you Sarah and Emma?" When they nodded weakly, he continued, "Your mom and dad are looking for you. Everyone is looking for you. How long have you been here?" "Since yesterday," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "We were chasing a butterfly and we saw this shiny thing in the grass. When we got close to look at it, it just... It just grabbed us." Martinez examined the trap more closely while maintaining his distance. The mechanism was ancient and completely rusted, which explained why it had remained hidden for so long. Vines and small bushes had grown around it, camouflaging it almost completely. The girls had stumbled upon it purely by accident, and their natural curiosity had led them to investigate what must have appeared to be an interesting metal object poking through the vegetation. The trap spring mechanism was incredibly powerful. Designed to hold large predators like bears or wolves, the fact that both girls were still conscious and able to speak was nothing short of miraculous. Martinez could see that while their legs were definitely injured, the rusty condition of the trap might have actually worked in their favor. The teeth were so corroded that they weren't. As sharp as they once had been, his radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, this is dispatch. Backup and medical teams are en route to your location. ETA, approximately 12 minutes. What's your status?" "I have both subjects located and alive. They're trapped in what appears to be an old bear trap. The mechanism is still active, and I cannot safely remove them without proper equipment. We need the fire department with heavy rescue tools, and I need a paramedic team prepared for possible severe leg injuries." As Martinez spoke into his radio, he kept his eyes on the girls, monitoring their condition. Emma, who had been quieter than her sister, suddenly spoke up. "The man said it was buried treasure," she said weakly. Martinez felt his blood chill. "What man?" "Emma, was there a man here when you got trapped?" Sarah answered instead, her voice gaining slight strength. "When we first got caught, there was an old man watching us from the trees. He had a long gray beard and dirty clothes. He told us it was buried treasure and that we were very lucky to find it. Then he just walked away." Martinez keyed his radio again, this time with even more urgency. "Dispatch, be advised we may have a possible suspect in the area. Adult male, elderly, gray beard, may have been present when the subjects became trapped. Expand the search perimeter and notify all units to be on the lookout." Rex suddenly raised his head and looked toward the tree line. His ears were forward, and Martinez could see the hair on the dog's back beginning to rise. Someone or something was watching them from the shadows of the forest. The sound of todas. Approaching helicopters grew louder overhead, and Martinez could hear vehicles approaching through the forest. Help was almost there, but the feeling that they were being observed made him increasingly uncomfortable. He positioned himself between the girls and the tree line where Rex continued to stare, his hand resting on his service weapon. "Stay with me, girls," he said softly. "Help is almost here, and we're going to get you out of there very soon." Martinez's training kicked in immediately, overriding the shock and horror of what he was seeing. The rusty metal trap was enormous, far larger than any animal trap he had ever encountered. It appeared to be some kind of antique bear trap, the kind that had been banned for decades due to their inhumane nature. The metal jaws, each tooth as long as a man's finger, had clamped down around both girls simultaneously. Sarah and Emma lay on their sides, their small bodies positioned in such a way that the trap had caught them both across their lower legs. They were conscious, but clearly in tremendous pain and shock. Their faces were streaked with tears and dirt, and their voices were hoarse from calling for help. "It's okay. Girls," Martinez called out, his voice steady despite the churning in his stomach. "I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Rex. We're here to help you. You're going to be just fine." Rex had positioned himself near the girls, but was careful not to get too close to the trap mechanism. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, lying down in the grass and whimpering softly, as if trying to comfort the children with his presence. Martinez began his assessment while speaking continuously to keep the girls calm. "Can you tell me your names? Are you Sarah and Emma?" When they nodded weakly, he continued, "Your mom and dad are looking for you. Everyone is looking for you. How long have you been here?" "Since yesterday," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "We were chasing a butterfly, and we saw this shiny thing in the grass. When we got close to look at it, it just it just grabbed us." Martinez examined the trap more closely while maintaining his distance. The mechanism was ancient and completely rusted, which explained why it had remained hidden for so long. Vines and small bushes had grown around it, camouflaging it almost completely. The girls had stumbled upon it purely by accident, and their natural curiosity had led them to investigate what must have appeared to be an interesting metal object poking through the vegetation. The trap's spring mechanism was incredibly powerful. Designed to hold large predators like bears or wolves, the fact that both girls were still conscious and able to speak was nothing short of miraculous. Martinez could see that while their legs were definitely injured, the rusty condition of the trap might have actually worked in their favor. The teeth were so corroded that they weren't. As sharp as they once had been, his radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, this is dispatch. Backup and medical teams are en route to your location. ETA approximately 12 minutes. What's your status?" "I have both subjects located and alive. They're trapped in what appears to be an old bear trap. The mechanism is still active, and I cannot safely remove them without proper equipment. We need the fire department with heavy rescue tools, and I need a paramedic team prepared for possible severe leg injuries." As Martinez spoke into his radio, he kept his eyes on the girls, monitoring their condition. Emma, who had been quieter than her sister, suddenly spoke up. "The man said it was buried treasure," she said weakly. Martinez felt his blood chill. "What man?" "Emma, was there a man here when you got trapped?" Sarah answered instead, her voice gaining slight strength. "When we first got caught, there was an old man watching us from the trees. He had a long gray beard and dirty clothes. He told us it was buried treasure and that we were very lucky to find it. Then he just walked away." Martinez keyed his radio again, this time with even more urgency. "Dispatch, be advised we may have a possible suspect in the area. Adult male, elderly, gray beard, may have been present when the subjects became trapped. Expand the search perimeter and notify all units to be on the lookout." Rex suddenly raised his head and looked toward the tree line. His ears were forward, and Martinez could see the hair on the dog's back beginning to rise. Someone or something was watching them from the shadows of the forest. The sound of approaching helicopters grew louder overhead, and Martinez could hear vehicles approaching through the forest. Help was almost there, but the feeling that they were being observed made him increasingly uncomfortable. He positioned himself between the girls and the tree line where Rex continued to stare, his hand resting on his service weapon. "Stay with me, girls," he said softly. "Help is almost here, and we're going to get you out of there very soon." The rescue team arrived with the thunderous sound of breaking branches and heavy equipment. 3 paramedics, 2 firefighters with specialized tools, and 2 additional police officers emerged into the clearing. The lead paramedic, a woman named Janet Rodriguez, immediately took charge of the medical situation. While the fire department began examining the trap, Mechanism. We're going to need to approach this very carefully, announced Fire Captain Williams as he knelt near the ancient device. This trap is so old and rusted that any sudden movement could cause it to shift or the metal to break unexpectedly. We need to stabilize the entire mechanism before we attempt to open it. The paramedics worked around the firefighters, carefully inserting 4 lines into both girls' arms and administering pain medication. Janet Rodriguez spoke to the twins in a calm, reassuring voice while monitoring their vital signs. "You girls are incredibly brave. We're going to have you out of here very soon, and then you can see your parents." Martinez briefed the other officers about the mysterious man the girls had described. "Officer." Chen immediately began photographing the scene and looking for any footprints or other evidence that might lead to identifying the stranger. Officer Brooks started a systematic search of the surrounding area, looking for any signs of recent human activity. Rex continued to patrol the perimeter of the clearing, his attention divided between watching for potential threats and staying close, enough to provide comfort to the trapped girls. The dog had proven invaluable, not just in locating the victims, but in providing them with emotional support during their ordeal. Captain Williams and his partner began the delicate process of stabilizing the trap. They used hydraulic spreaders to very slowly and carefully begin separating the metal jaws. The ancient mechanism groaned and protested with each tiny movement, sending chills through everyone present. The good news, Janet Rodriguez reported after her initial examination, is that while both girls have significant lacerations and likely some broken bones, their major arteries appear to be intact. The rust and corrosion on the trap teeth actually created a more crushing injury rather than clean cuts, which may have prevented severe bleeding. As the firefighters worked, more details about the trap began to emerge. Officer Chen discovered partially buried metal stakes around the clearing, suggesting that this hadn't been the only trap in the area. The arrangement appeared deliberate, as if someone had created a network of these devices throughout this section of forest. This is looking less like an abandoned hunting trap and more like a deliberate setup, Martinez reported to his supervisor over the radio. "We're going to need a full investigation team out here once we get the girls to safety." Sarah, who had been drifting in and out of consciousness due to the pain medication, suddenly became alert again. "Officer Martinez," she called weakly. The man. He had a notebook. He was writing things down while we were trapped. This new information sent another chill through the rescue team. If someone had been documenting the girls' suffering, it suggested something far more sinister than a simple accident involving old hunting. "Equipment. Did you see which direction he went when he left?" Martinez asked gently. Emma answered this time. "He went toward the big rock that looks like a face. He said he had to check on his other treasures." Officer Brooks immediately headed in the direction the girl had indicated, while Officer Chen continued documenting the scene. The rock that looks like a face was a well-known landmark in the area, a large granite boulder that had been carved by wind and water into a shape that resembled human features. Captain Williams finally achieved the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The hydraulic spreaders had created enough gap in the trap's jaws to allow the paramedics to safely extract the girls. "We're ready for extraction," he announced. "But we need to move quickly once we start. I'm not sure how long these old metal components will hold under this pressure." The extraction took less than 2 minutes. It felt like hours to everyone involved. Both girls were immediately placed on stretchers and given additional pain medication. Their injuries were serious, but not life-threatening. According to Janet Rodriguez's assessment, as the medical helicopter prepared to transport the twins to the regional trauma center, Officer Brooks returned from his search of the granite boulder area. His expression was grim, and he carried something in an evidence bag. "You're going to want to see this," he said to Martinez, holding up the bag. Inside was a small, leather-bound notebook filled with handwritten entries. The most recent entry was dated just 1 day ago, and it described in disturbing detail the process of trapping specimens for research purposes. The notebook contained dozens of similar entries spanning several months, each describing different locations where traps had been set and detailing the results. Most entries mentioned animals, deer, raccoons, even a few domestic pets that had wandered into the area. But the most recent entries had begun focusing on a different type of specimen. The case had just taken a much darker turn. Detective Sarah Morrison arrived at the scene just as the helicopter was disappearing over the treetops, carrying the twin girls to safety. A 20-year veteran of the force, Morrison had seen her share of disturbing cases. But the notebook Officer Brooks handed her made her stomach turn. The handwriting was meticulous and precise, documenting what appeared to be a methodical campaign of trapping various creatures in the forest. The entries weren't random observations. They were systematic experiments. Each page contained detailed notes about trap placement, bait used, time until capture, and the behavior of trapped animals. The handwriting revealed an educated individual, someone with scientific training who was using proper research methodology for deeply disturbing purposes. Look at entry number 47, Officer Brooks pointed out. This person was specifically targeting the camping area. They knew families with children frequented this section of forest. Morrison read the entry with growing alarm. The writer had observed camping patterns over several weekends, noting which families had children, what time they typically went hiking, and which trails they preferred. Sarah and Emma Thompson's family had been watched and documented for 3 separate camping trips before. The trap was finally activated. Rex, who had been resting after the intense rescue operation, suddenly became alert again. The German Shepherd stood and began moving toward the tree line on the opposite side of the clearing from where they had originally entered. His behavior indicated he had detected something or someone that warranted investigation. Martinez, take Rex and do a careful sweep of that area, Morrison instructed. But maintain radio contact at all times. If this person is still out there, they've demonstrated that they're dangerous and unpredictable, as Martinez and Rex disappeared into the forest. Morrison continued examining the evidence. The notebook contained detailed maps of the local area with various locations marked in red ink. These appeared to be trap sites, and if the documentation was accurate, there were at least 12 active traps scattered throughout a 5-mile radius of the camping area. Crime scene technicians began arriving to process the trap location and search for any additional evidence. They found disturbing confirmation of the notebook's accuracy: buried metal stakes and camouflaged tripwires indicated that the bear trap was just one component of a larger, more sophisticated trapping system. Dr. Emily Hassan, a forensic psychologist who had worked with the department on previous cases, arrived to provide insight into the perpetrator's mindset. After reviewing the notebook entries, her assessment was chilling. This individual demonstrates classic characteristics: someone escalating toward more serious crimes, she explained to Morrison. The systematic documentation, the progression from animals to humans, and the apparent pleasure derived from observing suffering all point to someone who could become increasingly dangerous if not apprehended quickly. The most disturbing discovery came when technicians found a small digital camera hidden in a tree overlooking the trap site. The camera's memory card contained hundreds of photos and videos, documenting not just the twins' capture, but dozens of other incidents involving trapped animals. The final video showed the mysterious elderly man the girls had described, standing over them and making notes in his journal while they cried for help. Morrison studied the video footage carefully. The man appeared to be in his 60s, with the gray beard the girls had described. He was wearing military surplus clothing and moved through the forest with the confidence of someone very familiar with the terrain. Most disturbing was his demeanor. He showed no emotion whatsoever while watching the children suffer. Martinez's voice crackled over the radio. Detective Morrison, Rex has found something significant. About half a mile northeast of your location, there's what appears to be a campsite. It's been occupied recently, and there are multiple traps staged here, ready for deployment. Maintain your position and observe only. Morrison responded immediately. Do not approach the campsite. I'm sending backup to your location within minutes. Additional officers were moving through the forest toward Martinez's position. The situation had evolved from a rescue operation into an active manhunt for someone who posed a clear and present danger to anyone entering the forest. Dr. Hassan's profile of the suspect proved accurate when officers discovered the campsite. It was meticulously organized, with detailed topographical maps pinned to trees and marked with trap locations. A makeshift laboratory table contained tools for maintaining and modifying the traps, along with additional notebooks containing years of similar documentation. But most alarming was the discovery of future plans. The suspect had been preparing to expand his operations. With maps of 3 other popular camping areas in neighboring counties, each map was marked with potential trap locations and observations about visitor patterns. The campsite appeared to have been abandoned recently, within the last few hours. A small campfire was still warm, and personal belongings suggested a hasty departure. The suspect had likely heard the rescue helicopters and decided to flee before authorities could locate him. Rex began tracking a scent trail leading away from the campsite, deeper into the wilderness. The trail headed toward a remote section of forest that connected to an old logging road, where the suspect could potentially have a vehicle waiting. The tracking operation continued through the evening, with multiple canine units joining Rex and following the suspect's trail. The scent led through increasingly difficult terrain, over rocky slopes and through dense underbrush that seemed designed to confuse and delay pursuers. It became clear that the suspect was intimately familiar with this area and had likely planned multiple escape routes. Detective Morrison established a command post at the abandoned campsite while teams spread out to search the surrounding area. The evidence recovered from the camp painted a disturbing picture of someone who had been operating in these woods for years, perfecting his methods and gradually escalating his targets. Among the most significant discoveries were medical supplies and surgical instruments, suggesting the suspect had been treating injured animals, rather than simply observing them. Dr. Hassan's analysis of the documentation revealed a pattern of behavior consistent with someone conducting crude medical experiments under the guise of research. This individual views living creatures as test subjects rather than living beings. Dr. Hassan explained to the search team leaders the progression from small animals to domestic pets to children indicates someone who has lost all sense of empathy and is driven entirely by whatever research objectives he's pursuing at the Regional Trauma Center. Sarah and Emma Thompson underwent emergency surgery to repair damage to their legs. The rusty metal had caused significant tissue damage and multiple fractures, but doctors were optimistic about their recovery. Their parents had been airlifted to the hospital and were maintaining a bedside vigil. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the lead surgeon, provided updates to Detective Morrison throughout the evening. Both girls are stable and responding well to treatment. They're incredibly fortunate. A few more hours in that trap could have resulted in permanent disability or worse. The infection risk from the rusty metal is our primary concern now. As night fell, search operation had to be modified for safety reasons. The difficult terrain and thick forest canopy made night operations extremely dangerous, especially given that the suspect had demonstrated extensive knowledge of the area and had shown no hesitation to harm innocent people. However, Rex and his handler Martinez continued tracking under controlled conditions, using night vision equipment and maintaining constant radio contact with the command post. The German Shepherd had proven invaluable throughout the operation and showed no signs of losing the scent trail. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Rex led Martinez to another significant discovery. Hidden beneath fallen logs and carefully camouflaged was what appeared to be a supply depot, dozens of additional traps, camping supplies, and most disturbing of all, detailed files on local families who regularly visited the camping areas. The files contained photographs taken with telephoto lenses, family schedules, vehicle descriptions, and even home addresses. The Thompson family had an extensive file, indicating they had been under surveillance for months before the twins were trapped. This goes way beyond what we initially thought, Morrison radioed to her supervisor. This individual has been conducting systematic surveillance of multiple families, and the twins may not have been his first intended victims. We need to expand this investigation immediately. The investigation team discovered that the suspect had been using multiple identities and had established supply caches throughout a vast area of wilderness. The operation was far more sophisticated than anyone had initially realized. Suggesting professional military or scientific training, analysis of soil samples and vegetation around the supply depot indicated. It had been in use for approximately 2 years. During that time, several unexplained disappearances of domestic animals had been reported in the area, but no one had connected them to a single individual or suspected human. Involvement. Dr. Hassan's psychological profile was updated based on the new evidence. We're dealing with someone who has extensive outdoor survival skills, scientific training, and the ability to maintain multiple false identities. The level of planning and execution suggests this individual has likely committed similar crimes in other locations. At dawn on the second day of the search, Rex made the breakthrough the team had been hoping for. The scent trail led to an old logging road, where tire tracks were clearly visible in the soft earth. The tracks indicated a large vehicle, possibly a truck or van, had been parked there recently. Crime scene technicians were able to make plaster casts of the tire impressions and found several items that had apparently fallen from the vehicle during a hasty departure. Among these was a prescription bottle with a partially legible name, the first real clue to the suspect's identity. The prescription was for medication used to treat a rare neurological condition, and pharmacy records would be able to provide the suspect's real name and address. After more than 36 hours of intensive searching, the investigation was finally beginning to focus on a specific individual. But even as the net began to close around the suspect, additional disturbing evidence continued to emerge. The supply depot contained detailed plans for expanding operations to national parks in 3 different states, suggesting the scope of the threat was far larger than anyone had imagined. The prescription bottle led investigators to Dr. Walter Grimm, 72-year-old retired veterinarian who had purchased property in the remote wilderness area 3 years earlier. His background check revealed a troubling history that had somehow been overlooked. When he moved to the county, Dr. Grimm had lost his veterinary license in another state, following accusations of conducting unauthorized experiments on animals. While criminal charges had never been filed due to insufficient evidence, the veterinary board had permanently revoked his right to practice after multiple complaints. From pet owners and colleagues, Detective Morrison led a team to Grimm's property, a rundown cabin situated on 40 acres of heavily forested land. The isolation was perfect for someone wanting to avoid detection while conducting illegal activities. Rex and Martinez accompanied the team, as the German Shepherd had proven invaluable in tracking the suspect's movements. The cabin appeared abandoned when they arrived, but Rex immediately indicated the presence of recent human scent. A careful approach revealed that Grimm had returned to his property, probably to collect essential items before fleeing permanently. Fresh tire tracks led away from the cabin, and the building showed signs of hasty packing. Inside the cabin, investigators found a disturbing laboratory setup that confirmed their worst fears about Grimm's activities. The main room had been converted into a makeshift surgical suite, complete with examination tables, medical equipment, and detailed documentation of experiments conducted on dozens of animals over the past 3 years. The documentation revealed that Grimm had been testing the effects of various injuries on animals, behavior, and survival rates. He had progressed from small mammals to larger animals, and finally to planning experiments involving human subjects. The twins had been his first attempt to expand his research to include children. Dr. Hassan reviewed Grimm's personal journals and research notes. This individual has completely rationalized his behavior as legitimate scientific research, she explained to the investigation team. In his mind, he's advancing medical knowledge, and the suffering of his subjects is justified by the potential benefits to science. The journals contained references to other researchers who had supposedly been involved in similar work, but these appeared to be either historical figures from decades past or entirely fictional characters. Grimm had created an elaborate fantasy world in which his cruel experiments were part of a larger scientific community. Most disturbing were the future plans outlined in Grimm's notes. He had identified several national parks and wilderness areas where he intended to establish similar operations. Each location had been carefully researched, with detailed maps showing optimal trap placement and escape routes. The investigation team found evidence that Grimm had already begun establishing supply caches. In 2 of these locations, urgent notifications were sent to park rangers and local law enforcement in those areas to begin searching for hidden traps and surveillance equipment. Rex led the team to an underground bunker behind the cabin that served as Grimm's primary storage facility. The bunker contained hundreds of traps in various stages of preparation, along with sophisticated camera equipment and monitoring devices. It was clear that Grimm had been building toward a much larger operation. Among the most chilling discoveries were detailed files on dozens of families who regularly visited wilderness areas. Grimm had been conducting surveillance operations far beyond what anyone had suspected, compiling information on camping habits, hiking preferences, and family compositions. The Thompson family file was just one of many, and it revealed that Grimm had been watching them for over 6 months. He had photographs of their previous camping trips, knew their favorite hiking trails, and had even followed them home to document their daily routines as the evidence mounted. It became clear that the twins' ordeal was just the beginning of what Grimm had planned. His research notes outlined a systematic approach to studying human responses to various types of physical trauma, with children being preferred subjects due to their more honest emotional responses. The tire tracks from Grimm's departure led toward a network of old mining roads that connected to several major highways. He had apparently planned his escape route carefully, with multiple options for avoiding detection. The manhunt expanded to include state police and federal authorities, as it was likely that Grimm had already crossed state lines at the hospital. Sarah and Emma Thompson continued their recovery. The girls had undergone several surgeries to repair damage from the rusty trap, but doctors remained optimistic about their long-term prognosis. Both parents had been interviewed extensively about their family's camping history, revealing just how long they had been under surveillance. Without knowing it, the girls keep asking about the nice dog who found them, their mother told Detective Morrison during one of the interviews. They want to see Rex again when they get out of the hospital. That dog saved their lives. The investigation had uncovered a far more extensive and dangerous operation than anyone had initially imagined. Grimm's escape meant he could potentially establish similar operations elsewhere, putting countless other families at risk. The race was on to apprehend him before he could harm anyone else. The manhunt for Dr. Walter Grimm ended 72 hours later at a remote truck stop 3 states away. An alert gas station attendant recognized Grimm from the widely circulated photos and immediately contacted authorities. When officers arrived, they found him methodically preparing to abandon his vehicle and continue his flight on foot. Grimm's capture came without violence, as he seemed almost relieved that his elaborate operation had finally been discovered. During transport to jail, he made several unsolicited statements about his research, showing no remorse for the suffering he had caused, but rather expressing frustration that his work had been misunderstood by people lacking scientific vision. The investigation that followed his arrest revealed an even more disturbing scope of criminal activity. FBI analysis of Grimm's computer files and research notes uncovered evidence linking him to unexplained animal disappearances and suspicious accidents in wilderness areas across 6 different states over the past decade. In each location where Grimm had lived or operated, there had been unusual patterns of injuries to both wild animals and domestic pets. Park rangers in several states reported finding animals with injuries consistent with trap mechanisms. But these incidents had been attributed to natural predation or accidents rather than human interference. Most significantly, the investigation uncovered evidence that Grimm had been communicating with other individuals who shared his disturbing interests. His computer contained email exchanges with people across the country who were conducting similar research on animals. This discovery led to a nationwide investigation that ultimately resulted in arrests in 4 additional states. Dr. Emily Hassan's final psychological evaluation of Grimm revealed a deeply disturbed individual who had spent years rationalizing increasingly cruel behavior as legitimate scientific research. He exhibits classic symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, combined with narcissistic delusions about his intellectual superiority, she reported. The progression from animals to human subjects was inevitable given his mindset. At the hospital, Sarah and Emma Thompson made remarkable progress in their recovery. Both girls underwent several reconstructive surgeries to repair damage to their legs, and physical therapy helped them regain full mobility. The psychological trauma was addressed through extensive counseling, which helped them process their terrifying ordeal. 6 months after their rescue, the twins were able to return to their normal activities, including hiking with their family. However, their parents chose to explore different wilderness areas rather than returning to the location where the girls had been trapped. Rex, the German shepherd who had located the girls, was officially recognized for his heroic service. The police department awarded him their highest honor for canine officers, and he received a commendation from the state governor. More importantly to Rex, he was allowed to visit Sarah and Emma at the hospital during their recovery, forming a lasting bond with the girls he had saved. Officer Martinez, Rex's handler, reflected on the case months later. In 20 years of police work, I've never encountered anything as disturbing as what Grimm was doing in those woods. But it reinforced my faith in the incredible ability of these dogs to protect people. Rex knew something was wrong from the moment we started searching, and he never gave up until he found those girls. The legal proceedings against Grimm resulted in multiple convictions for attempted murder, aggravated assault, animal cruelty, and numerous other charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additional charges were filed in other states where evidence linked him to similar crimes. The Thompson family established a foundation dedicated to wilderness safety education, helping other families understand potential dangers in remote areas and promoting proper safety protocols for camping and hiking. They also donated generously to canine training programs, recognizing the vital role these animals play in search and rescue operations. Detective Morrison continued, investigating the network of individuals who had been communicating with Grimm. The case led to significant changes in how law enforcement agencies share information about suspicious activities in wilderness areas, creating better coordination between local, state, and federal authorities. The remote forest area where the twins had been trapped was thoroughly cleared of all remaining devices and has since been reopened to the public. Park rangers now conduct regular patrols of the area, and new safety measures have been implemented to prevent similar incidents from occurring. 5 years after the incident, Sarah and Emma Thompson, now teenagers, occasionally speak at wilderness safety seminars, sharing their story to help educate other families about potential dangers. They credit Rex with saving not just their lives, but with teaching them that even in the darkest situations, help can come from unexpected places. The case of the Rusty Trap and Dr. Walter Grimm remains one of the most disturbing criminal investigations in the region's history, but it also demonstrates the importance of thorough police work, the incredible abilities of canine units, and the resilience of the human spirit in overcoming even the most traumatic experiences